Arrival in dust and silence. The stagecoach wheels shrieked as iron struck stone, a jolt that rattled the bones of those inside. Dust stormed up around the coach, swallowing it whole until only the coughing of horses and the crack of the driver's whip broke through the haze. When the door creaked open, a black boot stepped down first, worn, scuffed, patched with care. Then came a small satchel, leather softened by years of hands. Finally, a woman descended, her figure wrapped in the plain lines of a travel-stained dress, bonnet shading her eyes. She moved slow, steady, as though she had carried weight heavier than luggage. The street lay quiet, too quiet for a frontier town at mid-morning. A sign above the saloon door swung loose on one hinge, creaking whenever the wind pushed at it. Across the way, a blacksmith's hammer paused in mid-strike, eyes fixed on the stranger. Two children, barefoot and dirt-smudged, scampered behind a trough, watching with wide eyes. The woman adjusted her grip on the satchel. Her gaze swept the street. Wooden fronts bleached pale from the desert sun. Shutters closed though the day was bright, one curtain shifting at the upper window of the general store. The town held its breath as though waiting for something. No, for someone. A man stepped forward from the far end of the street. Broad-shouldered, hat pulled low, his stride carried the wear of a rancher who worked land harder than men ought. His eyes, tired, wary, stayed fixed on her. "You Eleanor Whitfield?" His voice cracked like a dry branch. The woman's bonnet dipped. "I am." He nodded once. No greeting, no courtesy. Just a hand raised to the wagon hitched behind him. "Come on. Children are waiting." The horses stirred, uneasy. Dust rolled again, thin as smoke, across the street. Eleanor followed. Her steps were measured, her satchel held close, though her eyes caught on each shadow that moved along the porches. She did not look like a woman who traveled only to sew dresses. She looked like one who measured danger the way other women measure cloth. At the wagon, two young faces peeked over the side. One girl, hair the color of summer wheat. One boy, dark-haired, with cheeks hollowed by worry. When Eleanor drew near, the girl's voice slipped out, small but sharp with hope. "Are you going to stay?" Eleanor rested a hand on the wagon's rough wood, met the girl's eyes, then the boy's. She did not smile. She simply said, "Yes." The rancher helped her into the seat, hands rough, movements hurried. He kept scanning the edges of town, his jaw tight. Once the horses started forward, Eleanor finally asked, "Why so quiet here?" His answer came low, almost a growl. "Red Vultures been circling. Folks don't talk loud when buzzards got their eye on him." Eleanor said nothing. She only held the satchel tighter. The road out of town bled into open desert, flat stretches broken by rock outcrops, brush rattling like bones in the hot wind. The sun beat down hard, turning every shadow sharp. The ranch lay beyond a ridge, its house leaning against the horizon like a man too weary to stand straight. Fences sagged, one barn roof half collapsed. Chickens pecked nervously near the porch. The children scrambled down first, the boy pulling at Eleanor's sleeve. "Come see. My shirt's got holes. Can you fix it?" Eleanor bent, eyes level with his. "Bring it to me after supper. I'll patch it good." The girl edged closer, voice hushed. "Pa says Mama's gone to heaven, but maybe you can stay in her room." The rancher stiffened. His gaze flicked away, as though he'd heard words too raw to bear. Eleanor placed her hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "We'll see what's needed." Inside, the house breathed of emptiness. Dust lay on shelves, chairs sat unused, and the air carried that hollow quiet that lingers after loss. Yet the table was set with rough plates. Food, waiting though appetite, seemed long gone. Eleanor placed her satchel on the table, unfastened it, and drew out her tools. Scissors, needles, spools of thread in faded colors. She spread them with care, the way a preacher sets down a Bible. The children leaned in, eyes wide. Eleanor threaded a needle, steady, precise, the faintest light of fire catching on the steel. Her fingers moved with practiced rhythm, as if the needle were not just for sewing cloth, but for stitching something deeper. Outside, a horse cried. A shot cracked in the far distance. The rancher froze. His hand went to the rifle propped by the door. He waited, listening. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunshot. Eleanor did not flinch. She tied off the thread with a snap, laid the cloth aside, and said in a voice even and calm, "They'll come here next, won't they?" The rancher looked at her, startled, as if hearing something in her tone he did not expect. He did not answer, but she already knew. That night, the wind dragged dust against the walls, moaning like a lost soul. The children slept curled beneath patched quilts. The rancher sat at the table, oil lamp flickering, the rifle across his knees. Eleanor sewed by the lamp's glow, the needle glinting each time it pierced fabric. Her eyes were fixed not only on the torn shirt she mended, but on the darkness pressing against the window. She hummed something low, an old soldier's cadence, strange in a woman's throat, stranger still in a seamstress's. The rancher glanced at her. "Where'd you learn that tune?" Eleanor's hands did not pause. From a man who marched where guns never ceased. Silence fell again, broken only by the steady pull of thread. The rancher leaned back, shadows carving his face. "You didn't come here just to sew." Eleanor knotted the last stitch, bit the thread clean, and folded the shirt. Then she raised her eyes to his, calm but unyielding. "No," she said, and the lamp flickered, throwing her shadow tall against the wall, taller than a seamstress, taller than grief, taller than fear itself. Shadows in the canyon. The cattle bawled in the night, restless, hooves thundering against dry earth. Dogs barked, chains clattering, their cries sharp with warning. Eleanor was already on her feet, lantern in hand, dress hem brushing the floor. She moved quick, silent, steady as the ticking of a clock. The children huddled in the doorway, eyes wide. Thomas burst through with his rifle, face taut, sweat slick under the brim of his hat. Out in the yard, fire licked up from a haystack, orange tongues clawing the black sky. Sparks whipped with the wind, carrying smoke that stung the eyes. The rancher cursed, running for the pump. Eleanor set her lantern down and pulled the children back from the window. "They're watching," she whispered, her voice low but certain. The boy clutched her skirt. "Who's watching?" Eleanor's eyes narrowed on the ridge beyond the pasture. For a moment, the flames flared bright, and there, cut against the horizon, 3 figures sat on horseback, still as stones. Watching, waiting. By dawn, the fire lay smoldering, barn walls blackened, air thick with the smell of ash. Thomas stood among the ruin, hands shaking on the rifle, jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. "They wanted us to see it burn," he muttered. Eleanor said nothing. She laid a hand on Sarah's shoulder, guiding her back into the house. The girl trembled, clutching the torn hem of her dress. Eleanor lifted it, needle already ready in her other hand. "Sit," she said gently. The thread gleamed red in the morning light. Each stitch slid quick, sure, as though she had mended not just fabric, but wounds far deeper. Thomas stepped in, his voice rough. "You ever seen men like that before?" Eleanor did not raise her head. "Yes." That evening, the children gathered at her feet, Sarah with a scrap of cloth clutched tight, Daniel clutching a wooden toy horse missing one leg. Eleanor guided the girl's fingers, showing her how to push the needle through, how to keep the thread smooth. "You don't pull too hard," she whispered, "or the fabric puckers. Gentle, steady like breath." The boy leaned close, watching the horse's broken leg mend under her careful work. His eyes lit, as if the toy itself had been given back its life. Thomas lingered by the doorway, arms crossed, his gaze softer than before. He watched the seamstress not as a stranger now, but as a woman who filled empty spaces without trying. Yet beneath that moment, the house creaked with unease. Coyotes howled on the ridge, closer than the night before. The next day, word spread from town, another ranch gone to ruin. A barn collapsed in smoke, cattle driven off, family vanished without trace. Men gathered in the saloon, voices hushed, whiskey burning their throats. "The Red Vultures ain't a skin no more," one spat. "They're talking." An old man shook his head. "Sheriff won't raise a hand. Says we give tribute. We'll live." Eleanor sat at the far corner, needle flashing under lantern light as she worked through a pile of torn shirts. She listened. She did not drink, did not speak. But when the name Red Vultures circled the room, her hand trembled just once. The needle pierced too deep, pricked her finger. A bead of blood rose bright against the thread. She pressed it to her lips, eyes shadowed. That night, alone by the ranch graves, Eleanor knelt in the sand. 3 wooden markers leaned in the wind, names carved by hand. Thomas's wife among them, others lost to fever. Eleanor traced the letters with her finger. The lantern flame wavered, throwing shadows across her face. I buried him in the same ground, she whispered, words trembling but sharp. They came through, same as this. Took him, left nothing but ash. I swore I would never run again. The coyotes answered her vow with a chorus of howls. The wind rose fierce, snapping at the house, carrying grit that rattled the shutters. Inside, Eleanor stitched by lamplight. The children slept close together, their breathing steady, unaware of the storm outside. Thomas sat across from her, rifle within reach. His eyes stayed on her hands, the steady rhythm of needle through cloth. "That tune again," he said at last. "You hum it like you've known it all your life." Eleanor paused. The thread stretched taut, needle glinting in the lamplight. "My husband whistled it on the march," she answered, voice low. "When the sky filled with cannon smoke and men fell like wheat, that tune kept his heart steady. He taught it to me." Thomas leaned forward. "You talk like you've been there yourself." Eleanor's eyes lifted, steady, unblinking. "In every way but standing in the mud. I heard the stories, counted the wounds, buried the dead. You learn enough, it feels the same." Her needle moved again, quick and sharp, as if stitching the memory shut before it could break open further. The dogs barked sudden, wild, near the midnight hour. Thomas sprang for the door, rifle ready. Eleanor was already there, lantern lifted high. Out past the fence line, torches flickered like eyes in the dark. Riders, 6 maybe more, moved along the ridge, shadows stretching long. Their voices carried faint, mocking across the distance. "Tomorrow," one called. "Tomorrow you pay," or "Tomorrow you burn." The riders wheeled, laughter echoing, hooves pounding into the canyon beyond. Thomas lowered his rifle, chest heaving. The children cried in the bedroom, woken by the noise. Eleanor turned back from the window, her face unreadable. She set the lantern on the table, steady flame throwing long shadows up the walls. Then she opened her satchel, laid out her tools, scissors, needles, spools of thread, all gleaming under the light. Her fingers lingered on the shears, steel edges sharp. She closed them once, the snick of metal echoing like a gunshot in the silence. Then, calm as a prayer, she said, "Tomorrow, then." Blood on the horizon. Gunfire cracked at dawn, shattering the stillness. Chickens scattered, feathers flying, dogs howled and snapped at the air. Hooves thundered over the ridge, and with them came the Red Vultures, faces masked with red cloth, rifles raised, torches flaring in their fists. Thomas slammed the door open, rifle in hand. "Get the children," he shouted. Eleanor was already moving. She seized Sarah by the wrist, swept Daniel in her arms, and dragged them toward the root cellar. Dust rained from the ceiling as another shot tore through the wall. The boy sobbed against her shoulder, but Eleanor's grip was iron. She thrust the children down the cellar steps, voice sharp as steel. "Stay. Do not move. Do not make a sound." She shut the heavy door before their cries could rise. Outside, the barn burst in flame, timbers cracking, smoke billowing black into the morning sky. The Red Vultures hooped and hollered, circling the house. Thomas fired through the window, one outlaw spinning from his saddle with a scream. But the answer came fast, bullets shredding the porch, shattering glass, gouging holes in the doorframe. Eleanor moved through the chaos calm as a storm's eye. She reached her satchel, drew out scissors long and sharp, and slid them in her belt. Needles gleamed between her fingers, thin and wicked as thorns. A boot slammed against the back door. Wood splintered. Eleanor's hand shot to the shears. The door burst inward, and a man stumbled through, grinning behind a red bandana. His grin faltered when he saw her standing in the dim kitchen, eyes steady, hands already lifted. The shears flashed. Steel sliced flesh. He dropped with a howl, clutching his arm, blood spilling hot across the floorboards. Eleanor kicked him hard, sent him crashing into the stove. The iron rang out, the man silent after. Another shadow filled the doorway. Eleanor snatched a needle already threaded, the end tipped in black sap from desert berries she'd gathered in quiet evenings. She drove it deep into the outlaw's thigh as he lunged, the thread tangling around his spur. He crashed down, cursing, legs tangled in the very thread he mocked as women's work. She stooped, seized his pistol. It felt heavy, but not unfamiliar at her grip. Outside, Thomas staggered back from the window, rifle empty. "Eleanor," he bellowed. "They're coming through." She moved to his side, pistol raised. The next man through the front met her shot, clean, fast, unflinching. He fell hard across the threshold, boots dragging dust. Thomas gaped at her, breath caught. But she was already reloading, hands steady, eyes cold. The Red Vultures shouted, furious now, their leader's voice carrying over the smoke. "Burn it all. Leave nothing standing." Torches arced through the air, crashing onto the porch, catching the roof. Flames spread hungry across the shingles. Smoke pressed low, choking, heat searing the skin. Eleanor grabbed Thomas's arm. "Cellar now." They dragged the wounded outlaw from the stove, shoved him aside, and tore the cellar door open. Sarah and Daniel's wide eyes stared up at them through the smoke. "Quiet," Eleanor whispered. Not a sound. The flames roared louder, the roof groaning above them. Boots stomped heavy on the porch, voices shouting through the smoke. One outlaw yanked the cellar door, but Eleanor was waiting. She thrust the barrel of the pistol up into his chest and fired. He dropped, smoke curling around his lifeless face. The cellar filled with screams, not the children's but the outlaws outside. Shouts of retreat, of fear. The rifle's thunder cracked again, Thomas firing into the smoke with desperate fury. And Eleanor, her eyes burning bright as the fire itself, stood at his side, steady as stone. When the smoke cleared, the ranch lay blackened, half its walls gone, but the Red Vultures had fled. 2 bodies sprawled in the dirt, blood soaking into the dust. The rest were shadows vanishing into the canyon, leaving behind silence broken only by crackling fire and the whimpers of frightened animals. Thomas sank to his knees, coughing, rifle slipping from his hands. "God help us, we'll never hold against them." Eleanor stood over him, pistol still in her hand, smoke curling from the barrel. Her dress was streaked with ash, her hair loose from its pins, eyes fierce in the ruin. "They'll be back," she said, flat certain. Thomas looked up at her then, as though seeing her for the first time. Not a seamstress, not a widow, but something else entirely. "Who are you?" he whispered. Eleanor wiped ash from her cheek, gaze fixed on the canyon where the Red Vultures had gone. "Someone who has buried enough," she said, and her voice carried the weight of graves and battles, of a past stitched tight but never forgotten. The seamstress's hidden thread. The town's main street lay hushed, boards creaking under the weight of silence. Shutters bolted, doors barred, children pulled back from windows. Dust rolled like smoke, curling in the empty road where no man dared stand. Hooves broke the stillness first. A dozen riders swept in, red bandanas bright against the pale sun. The Red Vultures, bold as fire, their torches unlit but ready, their rifles glinting. Laughter cut sharp in the air. "Bring out your tribute," the leader roared, his voice thick as tar. "Or we burn your town same as the rest." The townsfolk stayed hidden. Not a soul answered. Not a soul moved. And then, one door opened. Eleanor stepped into the street. Black dress, hem singed from fire, a rifle cradled in her arms. Her bonnet was gone, hair loose, streaked with ash and sunlight. Across her chest she'd stitched a single thread of scarlet, gleaming like blood. The riders stilled, uneasy. Laughter faltered. "You again," the leader sneered. "The seamstress. We should have finished you in the fire." Eleanor's voice carried steady through the dust. "You'll finish nothing. The leader spurred his horse forward, rifle raised high. Who stands against the Red Vultures dies in the dirt. Eleanor's eyes never wavered. Then come die. A hush fell, heavy as thunder before the storm. The outlaws shifted, muttered. One spat, she's just a woman. The word cut short when her rifle cracked. A single shot split the air. One outlaw toppled from his saddle, boots kicking, his body thudding hard in the dirt. The rest cursed, reined back, eyes wide. The leader snarled. Witch? No. Eleanor said, her voice ringing. Widow. The town stirred then, heads peeking from windows, men clutching tools and old shotguns. The children pressed close to Thomas on the porch of the general store, Sarah's small hand gripping her brother's. Their eyes locked on Eleanor, as if her shadow held them safe. The leader bared his teeth, rifle raised. You'll bleed first. He fired. The shot split air, but Eleanor had already moved, dropping to one knee, her rifle rising with uncanny precision. The return shot shattered his hat from his head, the bullet grazing his cheek. Blood striped his face. The vultures roared, charging down the street. Eleanor rose from the dust, cloak of calm upon her, firing again and again. One fell from his horse, another reeled back screaming, a third thrown into the trough by her shot. Her movements were not frantic but measured, every bullet counted, every strike precise. And the whispers began, from lips trembling behind shutters. She shoots like a legend. She ain't no seamstress. She's the widow's hand. The name carried, hushed but fierce, a ghost of old stories rising to life. The leader dismounted, boots striking the ground heavy, his face twisted in fury. He drew twin pistols, spinning them bright in the sun. You'll be bones in the dirt, he spat. Eleanor stepped forward, rifle lowering, pistol sliding into her hand instead. She faced him square, her black dress swirling in the hot wind, scarlet thread catching the light like a mark of war. Their shadows stretched long across the dust. Neither moved, neither blinked. The town held its breath. Then steel roared. 2 shots cracked at once. Dust burst between them. The leader staggered, pistols falling from his hands, chest dark with blood. He gasped, stumbled, and collapsed, his red bandana soaking deeper crimson into the dirt. Eleanor stood untouched, pistol steady, eyes burning bright. The Red Vultures broke then. Some fled, spurring horses into wild gallops. Others dropped their weapons, begging mercy, eyes wide with fear. The townsfolk poured into the street, voices rising, shouts of rage and triumph. They seized the outlaws, bound them, dragged them down into the jail. Eleanor lowered her pistol, breath steady, her gaze sweeping the town. Thomas stepped forward, his children clinging to him, his voice raw. You saved us. Eleanor looked at him long, her face lined with smoke and sorrow. No, you saved yourselves. I only showed you how. The girl broke free, running to Eleanor, arms wrapping tight around her waist. Eleanor bent, held her close, her eyes closing just once against the child's hair. The boy's voice, small but strong, rose up. Mama, she's our mama now. The words struck through the hush, and no one spoke against them. As the sun bled down behind the ridge, the Red Vultures lay broken, their leader dead in the dirt. The town stood, scarred but unbowed. And the seamstress, widow, sharpshooter, mother, walked back through the dust, her shadow stretching long as a legend. The old storyteller's voice lingers at the end, and if you pass through that place, you'll hear the tale still told of the seamstress who came only to sew, but stitched courage into the hearts of a town. Some say her thread was scarlet because it was dipped in blood. Others say it was the thread of her own heart. But all agree, when the Red Vultures circled, it was the widow's hand that cut them down.